Audience. And now we will have closing remarks from candidates, and we will start with Rich Jankovic.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the league and all the sponsors for allowing us to be here, and our two able timekeepers that are our nemesis through all of this, and Debbie for moderating. I've joked before that as a basketball coach, that 10 seconds from out of bounds to cross half court is like an eternity, and as basketball fans, it seems like they're already past 10 seconds. We sit up here, and in 2 minutes, we're just like, oh my gosh, what happened? So thank you for taking good care of us and keeping us on task. My name is Rich Jankovic, and I am running for City Commission. I work in Manhattan, and I've worked in the consortium of the surrounding communities and counties in order to bring that here. And it's something that we're now evolving with our Flint Hills Council. And I think that's one of the critical skills that we have to have on the commission in order to build consensus and bring together all the parties to be positive and plan ahead for our future. As we look at what's going on just to the south of us, it's an unbelievable opportunity for any part of the country. And we're lucky enough to have that coming to Manhattan. And that will be here sometime between 2016 and 2018, fully operational. There's many challenges that are going to come with that. And I believe we have to plan properly for that and set the priorities, not just for NBAF, but for the companies that are coming, the families that are coming. We continue to have some growth and change at Fort Riley. We had a very unique time period when we knew Fort Riley was coming back, and we were reacting rather quickly. I remember people saying, why would Fort Riley do all this if they weren't going to come? But why wouldn't they wait till they were here? Well, if they wait till they're here, it's too late. And I believe we have to forecast that out. We might want to do a 2020 plan as a commission together, because we have to revive that and keep that as kind of a living, breathing opportunity document for us to look at the priorities we have, how we can spend our money, and how we can develop our community and continue to serve the people that are asking us to make those decisions. So with that, I ask for your vote on April 5th, actually between March 16th and April 5th, because you can vote absentee and then you can vote early. So I hope you go out and vote and you choose wisely, but I do ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jankovic. Wynn Butler.
I'd like to thank the league, all the sponsors of this forum, and also members of the audience and those of you listening on the radio. I'm Wynn Butler. I'm running for the Manhattan City Commission. I've got a long association with the city of Manhattan, having lived here the first time in the 1950s. My father was a professional soldier, and we constantly moved back and forth from Manhattan, Fort Riley, to various places all over the world. I also served on active duty for 24 years. Was fortunate enough to be assigned to the Manhattan region and Fort Riley 3 times. Once I actually was assigned to teach Army ROTC at Kansas State University, one of my favorite tours of the time I spent in the Army. Now, why am I running for the City Commission? I've got 37 years of leadership and management experience, both in the military and logistics, and most recently 13 years at Barton Community College, which operates a campus out on Fort Riley. And I helped organize that campus and get things going there. I've got a strong investment in the community. I chose to retire here in Manhattan. So did my father, because we've done a lot of world travels, and we learned rather quickly that Manhattan was a pretty unique place to live, and probably the best place to live. So Dad chose to retire here, and so did I. I've been married for 37 years. My wife is out in the audience, and she's been working at Mercy Hospital for since 1988. We bought our current house in town then. We stayed here as I traveled on various deployments in the Army, because I wanted my daughter to stay at one high school. I was unfortunate. I went to 4 different high schools because Dad kept getting reassigned. Made sure my daughter got to stay at Manhattan High for the whole time. She did disappoint us, though, went to KU, so she's a KU graduate. But this election is about priorities. It's all about priorities. And the 3 big ones are, of course, taxes. Everything boils down to money. Taxes, infrastructure, responsible growth. How do we pull those together? Now, you have the opportunity in April and with early voting in March to select 3 new commissioners to sit on the City Commission and set the priorities and the course for Manhattan in the future. Okay, it's up to the voters to decide what you think the priorities are and select, the 3 best candidates. No matter who you select, please go out and vote. We need to have a high voter turnout. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. John Modick, your closing statement, please.
Yes, my name's John Mata, running for Manhattan City Commission. I also want to thank the league and all the co-sponsors and everybody here and on the radio. I'd say the Kansas and Manhattan newbie up here. I've lived in town for 13 years. I have a wife, Karen, I've been married for 26, and two daughters, Tori, who's 15, and Jody, who's 10. I'm the Vice President of Logistics for Foot Locker. I run the National Distribution Center out in Junction City, as well as a regional center out in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. When I accepted the job here, my boss said he really wanted me to make a commitment to this area, and he said he wanted me to stay at least 2 years. Well, that was 13 years ago, so obviously I exceeded the commitment to be here. In fact, the concern the company had was they said, well, you've worked in San Francisco, you've worked in Los Angeles, you worked in Phoenix, how are you going to get along? It's a little Midwestern town and community. And I said, well, I've got my satellite dish, I can see my football, and I've got a 2-year-old and want to have another, and I can't think of a better place to raise a family than in the heartland and in Kansas. It sure seemed to beat LA. So that's how it started, and this has been the place we've lived the longest. The longest we've lived in the same house, which we've lived in the same house since we've been here. In fact, when we moved in, the neighbors had a welcoming party for us, and we really enjoy it here. One of the reasons I'm running for City Commission, probably the reason, is want to give back to the community, and I saw the talents that I have being able to do that. One thing we didn't talk a lot about here is what's going on with taxes and the taxpayer and the financial situation. Property taxes have gone up 22% in the last 2 years. And just the debt service alone on the general obligation bonds, forget about the STAR and the TIF, will necessitate another 20% increase over the next 2 years. And that doesn't account for staffing new fire stations, that doesn't account for what we don't know yet we'll need for K-18. FEMA's come in and changed the rules on the levy, that could be $5 million. So that doesn't count for cost of living increases for staff. There's a lot of other things that need to be added to that budget. And the one thing my career has been based on is figuring out how to make places more efficient at a lower cost and how to improve quality. I manage budgets in excess of $100 million. I've managed staffs of over 1,000, and I know how to make those tough decisions. Manhattan has a super bright future, but we've got a few bumpy years ahead, and we have to make sure we do it correctly. Thank you, and I appreciate your support.
Thank you, Mr. Mata. Phil Anderson, your closing statement, please.
A couple of weeks ago, I was at a forum in the public library, and it had to do with social services. And I'm looking at the people making up the forum. There were 7 of them. And they were all obviously enormously talented and very, very smart. And they were dealing with very limited budgets in the most efficient way. And they were all women. And I'm talking here about government in terms of diversity. I think we have a nice choice here, but the choice is somewhat limited by gender. We're 5 white guys. A friend of mine came back from South Vietnam, and he was explaining civil rights to a South Vietnamese guy, and he said it was between the whites and the blacks, and South Vietnamese guy said, really, well, which are you? I'm white. He said, no, you're not, you're pink. Okay, so we got 5 pink guys here. You know, we've had some marvelous commissioners in the past who were women. Wanda Fately. Carol Peake is sitting right over there, now Carol Gould. Karen McCullough. Jamie is sitting in the front, Jamie Morris Hardiman. Edith Stunkel, Helen Cooper. I think, whether I'm elected or not, what I'm going to do in the next 2 years is I'm going to find, there's a lot of women here, very talented women. I'm going to make it a point to make sure that we have, maybe next time we can get a majority of commission candidates who are women. I think it's important for the democratic process. I think it's essential. I'm coming after you. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Stan Herman, your closing statement, please.
How do I follow that? I get to be cleanup batter. I want to introduce my wife, Rosemary. She was a retired school teacher. She walked in right at the right time. We've been married 37 years. And I was in the Marines, so the Marines always know that the Navy gets the budget, and if they don't need an aircraft carrier or a submarine, the Marines get the leftovers. So they had to do more with less. The Marines had, they always knew they had older equipment than the Army, and they just had less personnel, so they had to do more with less. And I think that's the time we're entering right now. Some of the questions in the past forums have been, there's going to be a $300,000 to $500,000 deficit in the Discovery Center down there. How do you propose to cover the deficit? And my proposal was always that the city of Manhattan owns real estate. There's millions of dollars worth of real estate the city owns, and nobody pays taxes if the city owns it. There are 2 houses west of the airport, right outside the gate where the new military cemetery is out there. And they're worth $500,000 for those 2 properties with about 10 acres around it. And there's various properties that the city of Manhattan acquired during the urban renewal process back in the 60s and 70s. Those lots are vacant, the utilities are all there, there's no specials to put in utilities. And the city ought to start selling some of these properties that they've owned for maybe up to 50 years. So somebody can start paying taxes on them. Like they're not getting any school board taxes, they're not getting any county taxes on it. When the city owns a property, they just cheat the others out of taxes. And Marines look at things black and white, right or wrong. And there's a simple solution to this problem between the city charging the schools and the churches for water. Well, the schools and the churches, the 23 precincts that vote in schools and churches, ought to charge the city for holding their elections in their buildings. And that just solves the whole problem right there. It's just so simple, some of the solutions. And I just enjoy running for city commission here. I've had a lot of fun. We've got some great guys up here, and any one of them would make a great city commissioner. So there's 3 of them you're going to vote in. So I just want to thank you, and I hope I'm ending up a little bit early.
Mr. Herman, thank you. Please join me in thanking all the commission candidates for Very quickly, I'd like to once again thank our co-sponsors, AARP, AUW, the Chamber, and the Retired Educators Association. I'd like to thank our timekeepers and the other volunteers who make the League's forums run smoothly. I'd also like to thank News Talk 1350 K-Man. And then I'd also like to thank both Linda and Frank at the fire station. They always make it so easy to make arrangements for this room, and they don't get a lot of public acknowledgement, so I want to thank them. As a reminder, advanced voting by mail begins on Wednesday, March 16th, advanced voting in person on Tuesday, March 22nd, and Election Day is Tuesday, April 5th. Please remember to vote before or on Election Day. Thank you very much for joining us today.